All right, it's late, but we're live. We did it. Guys, I just want to thank you for once again your continued feedback. And I got to tell you, like, I love watching the research here, and a lot of times, like, I've, I hate to say I told you so, but I told you so. It's interesting. Today we are finally opened up in our state. Um, it'll be remain to be seen um, if it actually has something to do with elections or if it just a coincidence. All I know is this is that with all this big fascination for the COVID vaccine that's coming out there, I don't know if I actually saw in the news where it was talking about that if you had COVID-19, well, you could actually be protected for up to several years. And actually, sorry, I'm a little shivery here because I'm in my back room and it's a little cold right now, but I just couldn't go to bed without telling you guys about this. So earlier research that had come out, it actually suggested that the infection, right, actually gives you immunity for just a couple months. Well, that makes sense. But that was because the researchers, when they were only tracking antibodies, really, and that's the antibodies always decrease when an infection is passed. But when other immune responses, which still remember that signature of that virus, they remain active and they protect us from further infection. Your body is brilliant and powerful, right? And so what it does is it ensures that symptoms the next time around will be relatively mild. And as a result, someone who has been infected, who has actually been infected, they have this natural protection for at least 8 months that they're finding. But now researchers are finding it could be as much as several years, depending on the health of a person's immune system. And that's the caveat, right? It's the health of the immune system. And I think that's one of the things that we have not talked about much. But that's what researchers from La Jolla Institute for Immunology said is what they did is they took blood samples from 188 COVID patients and they measured all the main responses that they were looking for, including things like antibodies, and they looked at memory B cells and helper T cells and killer T cells, and really 8 months after infection. And they said that there's a good chance that people would have protective immunity, at least against serious disease, for at least 8 months, and probably beyond that. And that's really what this researcher found. So once again, nature doesn't need any help. It doesn't need any interference. And the researchers weren't surprised by earlier research that had seen this diminishing in the antibodies. They said that the immune response normally decreases over time to a certain extent, but that's normal. And that's what an immune response does. And they have this, at first they have this phase of ramping up, and after they have this fantastic expansion that eventually the immune system contracts and gets ready it goes into the steady state. What's interesting, though, is that another researcher found that the level of protection might not be the same for everyone. See, those people with a weak immune system, they have less protection. So sick people get sick. We've been talking about this, and they could be more prone to reinfection. And this was actually in the Journal of Science that came out here in 2021. But I got to tell you guys this. One thing that I've learned over the last 25 years with working people, over 1 million patient encounters, is that human beings, we actually absolutely follow through and on who we believe we are. So if you said to me that I'm really going to work hard to stop and lose weight, but I've been overweight my whole entire life, I'm just a big person, I know your days are numbered, right? You're going to probably lose the pounds and then you're going to gain in them again. And it's because we all act consistent with who we believe that we are. See, the strongest force in all of human personality is this need to stay consistent with who we define ourselves to be. So if you define yourself as someone who's really conservative, you're going to be, you're not going to act crazy and nuts unless you're really drunk, or and then you can say, well, it was just alcohol that did it. Well, it's really just you finally giving yourself permission to be yourself. The alcohol is your excuse. If you're really a crazy person, you just act crazy and outrageous and playful. You don't act conservatives because it's not who you are, right? Very often people say, I can't do that. I'm not that kind of person. And I always say to these people, really? So when did you actually define yourself? Really, how many years ago did you come up with what you could and what you couldn't do in your lives? How many years ago? And most people, if they really look at how they're living their life today, It's based on a set of standards, a set of beliefs that they made choices 10, 20, 30 years ago or more. And very often we made these decisions in our youth or and when we were very young about what to believe, of what we're capable of, and about who we are as a person. And that becomes this glass ceiling, if you will. And that ends up controlling us. There's a corny metaphor, but it's true. And I remember one time when I was with my family at the circus, and there was this person there that had this big elephant, and you look at this elephant and they have this little rope, right? You know, you've heard about this, but I actually saw it, and they drive that stake into the ground. This is over at the SAP, and you know that elephant could rip that entire tent down with almost no effort, but the elephant doesn't struggle. Why? It's because the elephant was conditioned. They take that elephant and they condition that elephant when it's a baby elephant, and that's how they train an elephant. When it's a baby elephant, it doesn't have the power yet to pull that big rope around it, and they drive this huge stake into the ground, and the elephant fights and he fights and he fights, and until one day finally that elephant decides, I'm just not capable of pulling this out. So once that becomes the definition of identity of anyone, or an elephant in this case, they don't try anymore. It's just who I am, and that's how it is. And this is just the way it is in my life. And I'd like to ask you to take a look at any place that you've got a limitation and ask yourself, when did I decide to accept that limitation? And you might not even see it as a limitation. You might see it as just that's who I am. So often in our lives, we've adapted to be a certain way so we don't fail, or so that people will like us or respect us, but it's not necessarily who we are. And so I just want to ask you today, you know, who are you? Is your body weak and is it susceptible, or is it brilliant and powerful? And are you giving it the tools that it needs to be strong and healthy? And so, hey guys, this is Dr. Osborne. I just wanted to remind you that you were born a virus killer, but you're also born to be healthy, and you're born to be amazing, brilliant, and powerful. Make it a great day. I love you guys. Take care.